Don't worry, amigos. For those of you just joining us, this is a school shooting. La Cafeteria. Is that right?
Please, don't hurt anyone.
Quítate la blusa.
Zoe Hall is in her final year of high school, still grappling with the recent loss of her mother to cancer. She's found herself withdrawn from life, haunted by the magnitude of her grief. One day, she and her father, Todd, go on a hunting expedition. They shoot a buck, but it doesn't immediately succumb to its wounds. Faced with the difficult choice, let the buck endure a slow, painful death or euthanize it. Todd attempts to explain to Zoe the ethical implications. But before he can finish, Zoe lifts a rock and ends the buck's life with a swift blow to the head. Todd is taken aback by her apparent lack of empathy, attributing her unsettling actions to the emotional scars left by her mother's demise. At breakfast, Zoe has an imaginary conversation with her deceased mother, something she frequently does. Although she recognizes this might seem strange, she's kept it a secret since these dialogues provide her with a certain level of solace. As she is preparing to leave for school, her best friend, Louis, arrives to pick her up. Their journey is interrupted by a group of troublemakers from school who force their car off the road. While they wait for the car to restart, Zoe observes a classmate, Chris, behaving suspiciously in a nearby field. She finds his actions odd, but dismisses them as typical for Chris, who is known to be an outcast. Today, their school is in the grip of senior prank day, a tradition that both Zoe and Louis find tedious. Amidst the pranks, Mrs. Jane, Zoe's chemistry teacher, acknowledges her drastic shift in demeanor following her mother's tragic passing. Despite Mrs. Jane's attempt to engage with Zoe about her change in behavior, Zoe deflects the conversation. Soon after, Zoe discovers a prom invitation from Louis in her locker. The thought of attending prom fills her with dread, and she's even more dismayed about the prospect of turning down Louis' invitation. They meet for lunch, and she tries to avoid the topic, but Louis addresses it and insists he asked her as a friend, not wanting them to be alone while their peers are enjoying themselves. Visibly distressed, Zoe excuses herself to the restroom. Meanwhile, the city is experiencing a series of benign explosions, keeping police, paramedics, and firefighters occupied trying to manage the situation. It's obvious that these explosions aren't accidental. During her visit to the restroom, Zoe spots a school bully, Anna, hiding something above a vent. However, when Zoe checks the vent after Anna's departure, she finds it empty. Back in the cafeteria, an unexpected shock comes as a van crashes through the glass doors, hitting a student. Emerging from the vehicle is Chris, the boy Zoe saw earlier. He proceeds to shoot the injured student. He's joined by a group consisting of Anna, who is revealed to be Chris's sister, a social outcast named Kip, and the gang's leader, Tristan. The group had strategically orchestrated the town's explosions as a diversion, and they now intend to turn their school into a war zone. They quickly assert their dominance, killing a few individuals immediately to instill fear and silence. As Zoe is about to leave the restroom, an injured girl stumbles in, pleading for help. Overwhelmed, Zoe is unable to help the girl before she dies. Recognizing that something terribly wrong is unfolding, Zoe cautiously exits the restroom, trying to overhear the shooter's conversation. The gang's leader, Tristan, makes it clear to the students that they have become hostages, expected to follow his every command. He recognizes a student from the gathered crowd, one who routinely tormented him in school. Without waiting for Tristan's direction, Chris ruthlessly shoots the bully. Despite Tristan having harbored similar intentions, he advises Chris to maintain his composure and only resort to violence when given explicit permission. Anticipating that the bathroom might be a place for potential escape, Kip heads there to verify its vacancy. Sensing impending danger, Zoe quickly scales the vent to avoid detection. She moves through the duct system, aiming to reach another exit. Simultaneously, Tristan instructs a female student to take out her phone and dial someone dear to her. She calls her mother, relays the grave situation, and voices her love. The panicked mother on the line promises to alert the police at once. After the call, Tristan reveals to the students that the authorities have been informed, thereby dissuading any attempts to secretly contact them. He even gives them permission to make what could be their final call to their parents. Overwhelmed and teary-eyed, they bid potentially final farewells to their families. Zoe's careful navigation through the vents is interrupted when the vent above the kitchen collapses, causing her to drop onto the floor. The loud noise draws Chris to the kitchen. A quick-thinking staff member intervenes to protect the hiding Zoe, taking a bullet in the process. Zoe is momentarily stunned by the sacrifice, but soon gathers herself. Tristan subsequently contacts the school's receptionist, informing her of the horrifying situation. Initially skeptical, the receptionist promptly alerts the security guard and principal. Elsewhere, Zoe manages to exit the school through a back door in the kitchen, meeting a group of classmates whom she briefs about the terror unfolding within the school. Following his communication with the receptionist, Tristan directs all the hostages to initiate live streams on any platform of their choice. He intends to publicly broadcast his actions, making a declaration to the entire world. As the live streams commence, he pleads with the platforms to not censor their content, threatening that any such action will result in more casualties. Just as Tristan is introducing himself to the viewers, the principal and security guard interrupt. Instead of being intimidated, Tristan confronts them, questioning if they comprehend his motivations. The principal recalls his recent reprimands of Tristan due to his declining academic performance and poor conduct, and how he predicted Tristan would never amount to anything. Tristan, however, insists his violent actions extend beyond a mere few meetings. He views himself as an intelligent and articulate man who has been subjected to societal scorn and bullying. As the principal attempts to placate Tristan, he is shot and killed. The security guard is spared and allowed to flee. Due to his live stream attracting the highest viewership, Lewis is assigned as the primary cameraman and usher to the front. Meanwhile, Zoe makes her way through each classroom to warn them of the crisis. While some teachers dismiss her warnings as part of a prank, others take her seriously. Nevertheless, the task of individually alerting each class is time-consuming. In an attempt to expedite the process, Zoe triggers the fire alarm. This strategy is thwarted when Anna, stationed in the electrical room, kills a security guard and dismantles the system, disabling the alarm. With the alarm silenced, everyone who had vacated their classrooms returns inside. The school receptionist makes an announcement over the loudspeaker, informing that the school is now under lockdown and instructing students to remain in their locations. As she makes this announcement, the first group of police officers arrives on the scene. Several news outlets have begun to report the situation, but Tristan insists on having the live streams broadcasted on national television. Upon reaching the receptionist's desk, Zoe is spared from a sudden explosion caused by a bag of explosives, which tragically takes the lives of those in the vicinity. The perpetrators had strategized this attack to prevent the dissemination of information to the students, although the explosion was slightly delayed. In the aftermath, Zoe experiences a hallucination of her deceased mother, who comments on the absurdity of the situation. Suddenly, Zoe spots Anna and feigns death to avoid detection. Once Anna leaves, Zoe resumes her mission of alerting students by knocking on a classroom door. Anna hears the noise and investigates, causing Zoe to attempt escape, but she ends up with a gunshot wound in her leg. Their chase leads them into a teacher's room filled with prank balloons. Zoe conceals herself within the room and seizes a moment of vulnerability to attack Anna. After a struggle, Zoe successfully shoots Anna. In the meantime, the police dig into Tristan's familial history and locate his home. Upon arrival, they find his mother lifelessly sprawled on the sofa, having been dead for several days. It becomes clear that Tristan is responsible for her death. Back at the school, Tristan leaves Chris in control while he heads to a Spanish class. The Spanish teacher implores him to halt his actions, but he responds by forcing her to undress her top on camera for the live stream viewers. Around this time, Zoe's father, Todd, learns of the horrifying events and speeds towards the school in his truck. The vicinity outside the school now teems with anxious parents, police, and reporters. Chris begins to hear voices in his head, which had initially driven him to join Tristan's mission. Influenced by these voices, he starts firing at the police outside, attracting Tristan's attention. Tristan swiftly returns to the cafeteria, bringing along the Spanish teacher and her students. Soon after, Kip encounters Zoe and chases her, shooting in her direction. Their pursuit leads them to a slippery hallway where Zoe uses a fire extinguisher to attack Kip and render him unconscious. She then transports him to the auditorium and fastens him to a seat with handcuffs. Zoe's hallucination of her mother reappears, suggesting that Zoe's inability to let go of her is preventing her mother from fully passing on. Upon regaining consciousness, Kip observes Zoe seemingly talking to herself and quickly concludes that she is similar to them. Zoe interrogates Kip about his involvement in the school shooting. Kip reveals a humiliating incident from middle school when he was undressed in front of the entire assembly, leading to incessant mockery from his peers. Zoe challenges his perception, suggesting that perhaps people were laughing out of joy, not ridicule. She reprimands him for murdering innocent individuals who had no part in his bullying and points out that his involvement in the shooting will only reignite discussions about his past humiliation. This revelation appears to jolt Kip out of the illusion created by Tristan's propaganda. Zoe emerges to pick up Kip's firearm and unexpectedly runs into Mrs. Jane, leading her class out of the building. Misinterpreting Zoe's intentions upon seeing the gun, the teacher presumes her to be one of the assailants. However, Zoe quickly clarifies her true intentions. She assists Mrs. Jane and her class in safely exiting the building, but declines to leave herself, determined to aid the remaining students. Mrs. Jane opts to support Zoe in her mission, and they head towards the library. A student who has been rescued informs Todd that his daughter has played a significant role in helping students escape, but has chosen to remain in the building. This news brings mixed emotions to Todd. Tristan soon perceives that an unknown individual is facilitating student escapes. He dials Anna's phone number and demands to converse with the person undermining his plans. Zoe courageously admits to him that she is responsible for Anna's death. Tristan instructs her to report to the cafeteria within 5 minutes, or he will begin executing the hostages. To demonstrate his seriousness, he shoots a girl at random. Witnessing this horrifying scene via the live stream, Todd retrieves his hunting rifle, resolute in his decision to personally rescue his daughter. Inside the school, Zoe approaches Kip, who is now overwhelmed with remorse. She leverages his guilt to persuade him to align with her cause. Zoe places her complete trust in Kip, handing him the firearm before venturing towards the cafeteria. Tristan is taken aback upon realizing that Zoe is the one disrupting his plans, recalling her as a familiar face from the school hallways. Zoe fearlessly confronts Tristan, challenging him. Kip unexpectedly appears to provide Zoe with backup. Tristan finds amusement in this, considering Kip to have been an inadequate participant in his plot from the beginning. A violent shootout follows, resulting in Kip's death at Chris's hands. Amid the chaos, Zoe and Lewis seize the opportunity to escape, pursued by Chris. After a distance, Lewis discloses that he has been wounded. Zoe leads him to an office, settling him on a couch, and shares a kiss with him. She makes a promise of attending prom together before exiting the office, intending to lure Chris away from Lewis. Zoe and Chris end up in the chemistry lab, where Zoe induces a minor explosion by turning on the gas. The resulting flames catch Todd's attention from his position in the woods behind the school, where he stealthily entered to save Zoe. Chris eventually corners Zoe and is moments away from killing her when Todd fatally shoots him. The police discover Todd shortly thereafter and take him into custody, but Todd is merely relieved to have protected his daughter. Tristan attempts to contact Chris via phone, but Zoe answers instead. Her hallucination of her mother reappears, spurring her on to fight harder. Zoe sends Tristan a photograph of Chris's lifeless body and provocatively asks for his thoughts. With his accomplices gone, Tristan finds his meticulously laid plans collapsing around him. As a desperate final act, he retreats to a van and sets off an explosive. During their call, Zoe asserts that his efforts were in vain. His intention of making a societal statement has been overshadowed by her acts of bravery. This reality hits Tristan hard, causing him to unravel. He randomly selects a hostage and drags him to the rooftop, leaving the remaining hostages unattended. Zoe returns to the cafeteria and discovers that the explosive device has only 40 seconds remaining before detonation. Zoe directs the hostages to flee before hurriedly moving the van outside the building. Her swift actions ensure that the ensuing detonation does not cause any harm. Upon returning to the school's hallways, a SWAT officer restrains her. During this moment, Zoe's spectral image of her mother finally departs, symbolizing her release from Zoe's consciousness. Subsequently, Zoe encounters the sheriff, who extends a hand in recognition of her courage. He discloses that Tristan perished in the blast, having been consumed by the flames. Following a brief conversation, Zoe reunites with her father, who is detained in a police vehicle. He expresses his immense pride in her actions. Lewis, now out of immediate danger, is being prepared for transport to a hospital. However, Zoe spots a suspicious individual exiting the school grounds. She procures her father's rifle and stealthily trails this person. She observes him unearthing a stash of cash from a nearby creek. Drawing her weapon on him, Zoe discerns that it's Tristan, who has seemingly staged his own death in order to escape. She fires at him, hitting him in the chest before moving closer. Similar to the buck at the movie's outset, Tristan is grievously wounded but not yet deceased. However, unlike the buck, Tristan is not deserving of her compassion, and she leaves him to experience a slow and agonizing death. The final scene depicts Zoe returning to the school premises and relaying the events to the sheriff.